Hello, this is Mosa Jacobs for DeBarra Spoken Word, and I am fortunate to be finally talking to the poet James Harpur, who lives quite close to Clonakilty as the crow flies. I think you live in Rossmore, don't you?
Yes, I live in Rossmore, which is on the Dunmanway Road, I think.
Yeah, and it's famous for its theater productions. Rossmore for its theater, I think, that draws theater groups from all over the country.
Yeah, we have
And
a theatre festival here every
yeah,
year.
are you
Yeah.
involved in that at all?
No, not directly. I mean, I am in as much as the village fills up with hundreds of cars every year, and we know people who are acting on the stage for the Kilmeen Society, which is our local drama group, who are fantastic. I think they won the National All Ireland Award a couple of times a few years back. So we know people who are involved. So yeah, it's a lovely buzz around the town at the moment, around the village, I should say.
I um I I will just show the book,
Oh yes,
in a way, the very dramatic book, the Gospel of Gargoyle, which is it your ninth poetry collection? Is that correct? The 10th.
yes, or 10th, I think.
Okay.
Yes,
And
yes.
you published it, did you say last autumn?
Well, actually, only a few months ago, sort of the start of December,
Okay.
yeah, 2024.
Yeah,
By
and
Ablana Press, who are based in Ballydehob, in fact. They're a little niche press, very high quality, run by a wonderful man called Paul O'Colmorn, who's also an artist, an engraver, and also a singer, and also a poet. There's nothing he can't do, in fact.
yeah. And he also has a beautiful gallery space together with his partner Marie, and they're going to host you this
Yes,
coming Saturday. And
that's
then
right.
on the 9th of April, you will be reading from the book,
I
from
will.
the
I
gospel
will.
in the bar spoken word, Clonakilty.
Can't
You'll be
wait.
hosted by Catherine Ronan, and people are. I mean, a Q&A would be part of the proceedings. Is that okay?
Oh, of course, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this weekend in Ballydehob, in Was Working Artist Studios, and in Clonakilty, O'Donovan's Hotel, I think.
Yes, Clonakilty, O'Donovan's Hotel, the venue at 3 p.m. We're doing a stage reading with songs, four French songs. Um, it, I think one's from the 16th century, and others are slightly antique. And there are three singers who do the different parts, so they sound very beautiful. And we have one at the beginning, one at the end, and two in the middle, and they fit in with the text, which I've excerpted from the book. So it's a kind of a resume of the book, if you like, performed by three actors, two from Dublin and one from Kent in England, the last being actually French, which will give authenticity to the performance because it's all set on the rooftop of Notre Dame Cathedral, and probably, but true.
And could you say, because this book actually has a kind of plot, doesn't it? I mean, it's a poetry collection, and it's definitely is poetry, or with beautiful illustrations by Paul Coleman.
Yes,
But there is also a story and a lot of drama involved. Even the word gargoyle. I mean, I don't, maybe not everyone knows the word. The gargoyle is the the demonic kind of stone presence that we see here.
that's
Uh,
actually the author photograph, Morse.
is that the author photograph? That's you.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Okay. Do we
And
have any?
you're right. Sorry, I sabotaged that. You're quite right. A gargoyle is a kind of uh, it's a sculpture, stone sculpture that you get. Yes, that's a good one. A stone sculpture you get on churches and other buildings, and they're partly functional. They usually drain away rainwater, but they're also,
Oh, I didn't know.
people think, designed to ward off evil spirits, even though they look like evil spirits themselves. And the whole book arose during COVID, if I can say a few words about how it began.
Absolutely, that's what I want to know.
It began during COVID, when I was quite rattled at the start of COVID, because there was a sort of apocalyptic feel to it, because no one really knew how bad the COVID virus was. And since I'd studied the Black Death in Europe in the Middle Ages, I got quite scared. And I remember having this dream where I woke up and I couldn't remember the dream except that it was powerful. But I was left with the sentence, quote, "Poets do not come here anymore," as part of the dream, the last part of the dream. And I couldn't think what it meant. And then some weeks later, I dreamt I was flying to the roof of Notre Dame Cathedral, which a building that meant a lot to me and means a lot to me. I was in Paris for a month in 2018 on a writing residency. I'd see the cathedral almost every day. And when the Great Fire broke out in 2019, I was absolutely devastated. And I occasionally have flying dreams where I fly backwards in the sky. And
Wow.
in this dream, I landed on the rooftop of Notre Dame, and I saw this gargoyle, a particular one, known as Le Stryge in French, which means the witch. And the gargoyle looked at me and said, "Poets do not come here anymore." And
This is literally what he said in
yeah,
your
this is
dream.
in the dream. And then I woke up and I thought, it just felt as if it was an enigmatic phrase, and that if I followed it, something would emerge. So over the coming weeks and months, I would meditate and do what is called active imagination, which is a psychotherapeutic technique pioneered by Carl Jung. And I'd also have occasionally flying dreams going back to Notre Dame. And this dialogue emerged between a sort of a poet figure like myself and this gargoyle figure on top of Notre Dame. And the story emerged that the poet was obsessed with wanting to know who or what started the fire in 2019. And he is convinced that the gargoyle must know who did it or what did it, because the gargoyle was on the spot. And the gargoyle, for his part, believes he's a spirit trapped in stone, needing some sort of redemption or escape. And the gargoyle thinks that the poet can do that through acts and words of imagination. So the gargoyle keeps pestering the poet to tell him poems and descriptions using imaginative language. So the two figures are kind of locked into a mutual pact, hoping to help each other and wanting stuff from each other. And the book moves towards a climax where we possibly find out who or what actually did burn the Cathedral of Notre Dame, and we find out whether or not Gargoyle does get redeemed from his stony carapace.
But you leave that to
No,
the
I'm not going
active
to
imagination.
spill the beans here, obviously.
Yeah.
So it does have a who. One reader said it's sort of part poem and part whodunit, and there is an element of that in it. But that's not really the point. The point is that in their dialogues they discuss themes like the nature of love, the nature of poetry. Is poetry a spontaneous thing? Spontaneous, that's right. Spontaneous thing. Or they discuss death, they discuss grieving and mourning, all sorts of things. Because in a way, Gargoyle is being educated by poets Um, and yet sometimes it's the other way around. It's a very strange relationship. Um, so yeah,
But yeah, was at some points I thought maybe this is partly at least about a relationship.
yes, it is. It's a relationship.
No, but I mean a real life relationship, a kind of a love affair.
I see a sort of romantic
Yeah,
relationship. You mean there is definitely a change in mood between them because at first the poet is repulsed by Gargoyle because he's ugly. I mean, physically ugly. Paul Colman's done a wonderful, slightly more detailed. Can you see that all
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
It's similar to the cover, but it's more sort of detailed.
Yeah.
And it's based on a natural gargoyle, as I say, called Lestrige. And the poet is repulsed by this sort of lumpen creature who sort of stands for everything that the poet's sort of repulsed by. But there's something about this creature who needs redemption, who's vulnerable, and who is deadly honest that attracts the poet. And so the feelings change during the book. And it's as if the gargoyle becomes more, I suppose, humanized. His language changes. In the book, Gargoyle first of all speaks in a sort of in prose like sentences. But as the book develops, his language becomes more and more poetical because he's learning how to, as Gargoyle says, imaginate. That's Gargoyle's own word for using acts of imagination. And I suppose poet thinks that everyone should imaginate because it has the sense of or the force of redemption. It makes us see the world in a more beautiful way and makes us more compassionate. So I think
How long did the actual writing process last? Because it,
um,
it started before COVID, as far as I understand. Did it?
no, just I had the significant dream just at the start of COVID. So like
Okay.
February. I can't remember when COVID started.
Well, the official lockdown started on the 12th of March.
Yeah, it was sort of shortly after that. So the first, it was the first few weeks of COVID where had the dream and thought it was significant. And I was doing a whole bunch of writing. It came very quickly at first during the summer, but then it always takes me ages to revise things and to introduce, one hopes, subtleties and refinements after the initial burst of material, which kind of poured out. Um, and I'm sure there are psychologists who will tell me that I was getting in touch with my shadow side, or the poet figure is anyway. There's
So
a whole
how do you
yeah.
feel as the writer, as the creator of this gargoyle? How do you feel towards him?
I feel very um, I feel very fascinated by him because he's different. I mean, it's not as if I didn't write it as if I was addressing a part of myself. Gargoyles seem to be an autonomous entity, a living, speaking, breathing thing. And it was quite sort of, what's the word? Um, it made me feel uneasy to see this creature sort of trapped in stone and wanting some sort of redemption of being. There are lines in the book which I'm not sure I'll be able to quote, but he says things like, "I'm told what love is, but I don't feel love." It's as if he's cut off from his senses, bar the bare minimum of seeing. but he's rooted to the spot because he's a gargoyle. He's on top of Notre Dame, just looking at the streets of Paris and watching the sunrise and the sunset. So he's kind of very static in a way, and his emotional life is static, and his intellectual life, and even more so his imagination, is static. And so when this poet turns up via dream, Gargoyle's desperate for him to come back. And Poet says to him, look, just tell me who or what burnt Notre Dame. And the Gargoyle says, I know the answer, but I'm not going to tell you. If I did, you wouldn't come back again. So
it's a 1001 Night
yes,
story, and it's a very
exactly. There's a bargain. It's a bit like I think it's Dr. Faustus, if I remember rightly, where there's a similar sort of contract,
So to your mind, to your imaginative mind, he has a soul, or he is a soul, or is he a demon?
Well, that's what I explore in the book, Mose, and I don't want to give I'm not being a deliberate tease, but
Oh, you're very welcome to be a deliberate tease.
it's taken me a while to reflect on those very pertinent questions that you ask.
Mm.
And I can't say, poets revel in ambivalence, don't they?
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'd just be doing, multiple choice multiple poems,
Or forms.
or forms,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, I mean, I certainly look forward to hearing you on the 9th of April, but there's one aspect that I'd like to just explore a little bit, because
Sure.
I think you told me you've done more with this poetry collection, maybe this script in a way, than you've
Yeah.
done with your other collections. Is that correct?
Yes, because it's mainly a dialogue between poet and gargoyle, it lends itself to other media. So, for example, I've written a radio play based on it, which nearly got produced by RTE, but COVID scuppered it, unfortunately. So that's waiting to go. I think it could be adapted to the stage. I think it could be an opera. Looking ahead, it could be an animated cartoon. It could be lots of things. A graphic novel would be very, very good. But in Clonakilty and Balladahob, it's actually being. I don't think you said this at the start. Perhaps
I
you did.
think I mentioned it. But
Did you mention that it's going to be a stage reading
yeah,
with
I did. And you said it's in the venue in O'Donovan's Hotel, and it's in Working Artist Studios on the 29th of March.
Yeah, so there'll
So
be three actors, three singers doing beautiful French songs. And in the middle of the performance, there's a 5-minute film done by a young filmmaker called Felix Morgan, who did this film based on one of the poems in the book about the ghost of the French philosopher Blaise Pascal, who suddenly appears as a third figure between poet and gargoyle. And Felix Morgan was struck by this scene and did this very fine film, I think. He's studying film in Dunleary. So that it's like a multimedia event based on the book.
yeah, and something tells me that this is maybe going to develop further, but we'll see. But keep an eye on Gargoyles. Do you actually on your website do you publish your upcoming performances and readings?
I don't actually. I was reliant on my sister to do my website. She was my webmaster, but she can't do that now. And I haven't yet found a
Okay.
replacement for that. So I don't know. I rely on word of mouth and smoke signals
Yes. Well,
and photographs.
yes, and the venues where you will be performing or where Gargoyle will make his appearance will also do that. Okay,
Yes.
thank you very much, James.
Very well.
I'm looking forward to yourself and Gargoyle in
Thank you
Clonakilty.
very much indeed, Marza. It's very
Okay.
nice to speak to you.